Hello again, everybody. We did a live yesterday, and we're going to do another live today because we have to talk about the Supreme Court decision, or a lack of a decision, actually. And so we want to get the news out to you guys. So we wanted to do a quick live stream and fill everybody in as to what's going on. We hope everyone is doing well. Whoever caught our show last night, we hope you enjoyed that show, and thank you for joining us again. And to everyone that is watching this show today on this Saturday, thank you for taking some time out over the weekend to listen to me and Alexander. We appreciate it. We know you can have a lot of other stuff going on, and we appreciate the fact that you are here listening to us. Last night my time, and last night Alexander's time, but in the afternoon U.S. time, we had the news that the Supreme Court has said that the Texas lawsuit has no standing. And Alexander, you will get into it. I welcome everybody that is joining us from YouTube. We are also streaming on Facebook as well. So hello to everyone that is watching us on Facebook as well. And Alexander will do like maybe a 20, 30-minute live stream to fill everybody in as to the decision and how we feel about it. Don't feel despair. Don't feel deflated.
No.
This was, I would say this was, it was exciting to see the Texas lawsuit and then to see all the other states jump on board. But it was, we've said many times over our videos consistently that it was a long shot.
Yes.
And it is going to be an uphill battle for the Trump legal team. And that while there was a lot of positive things that were happening, and I'm going to choose my words carefully, given YouTube's new restrictions, while a lot of positive things were happening, time was against the Trump legal team, and such a massive case, and such a massive undertaking as what they took on. It was going to be a challenge to get everything to the right courts, through the right courts, and eventually to the Supreme Court in order to get a hearing, which I think is what everyone would have liked to see.
Yes.
We do have some late breaking news in that, from what I understand, the Trump legal team will retool the lawsuit, the filing, and they're going to remove it. The framework of the filing will remain as is, but they're going to remove it. They're going to remove it from the hands of Texas, and they're going to start to place it under individuals, so that maybe it has more merit, but I doubt it'll have much. I doubt it'll make a difference. But anyway, Alexander, get into the news with Texas and the Supreme Court saying that the lawsuit has no standing. They didn't rule against it. They didn't say it's garbage or rubbish, anything like that. The way I saw it, procedural. They said it has no standing. They didn't want to touch it. They didn't want to get involved, and they just left it as is. So, Alexander.
I think you've just summed it up precisely. I mean, they didn't want to touch it. They see this as extremely difficult territory for the Supreme Court to become involved in. They are very, very worried, obviously, about getting drawn into these sort of issues. So they said that they didn't have standing, which I have to say surprises me, because it is, as Alito and Clarence Thomas, the only two dissenting judges, pointed out, what the Supreme Court was originally set up to do. It was set up in main part, to arbitrate disputes between states. So I would have thought that, if you read that literally, that means that the Supreme Court is obliged to consider cases of this kind. And though, obviously I understand that there's, this attempt to substitute plaintiffs, I would have thought that other plaintiffs might actually have less standing in this kind of case than states do, because I'd always assumed that states had essentially a right to be heard. And I think this is, for me, the one thing about this that I find the most disappointing, because if the Supreme Court had heard this and had decided against Texas, then that would have been a decision. They would have had to give reasons. We would have either agreed or disagreed with those reasons, but we would have had a decision. What the Supreme Court has done is it's ducked making a decision. It's come up with this argument that there was no standing, which, as I said, I don't agree with. And as a result, it's avoided having to say what it basically thinks about this case. Now, bear in mind something else, something very interesting. Two judges dissented, Alito and Clarence Thomas, the three justices that Donald Trump fought for, selected and got confirmed by the Senate, often after very bruising battles, especially in Kavanaugh's case. Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett voted with a majority. So that tells you that the president picking justices doesn't mean necessarily that those justices will go with him. And all those people who were saying that those three justices, were going to be Trump placemen, well, that's turned out to be completely wrong. But that's just an aside. I think it is going to be very difficult now to get a Supreme Court decision anytime soon. In fact, I don't expect it. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we have to be realistic about that. But you're absolutely right to say there's no reason for people to be deflated. All sorts of things have come out, and in the future, when there is the inauguration of the president-elect after the 20th of January, there will still be lots of things to do and lots of ways to organize and lots of issues to take forward. So this should be seen as, if you like, an event which is, given all the realities, I have to use I'm picking my words very carefully, given all the realities, given the essential impossibility of putting a case of such complexity together in such a short space of time, it was always far and away the most likely event. But in politics, there is no final victory, there is no final defeat. You go on, and that's what all of us must do. That is what we will be doing here in our programs. We will be moving forward. There is no reason to feel deflated. There is no reason to feel disappointed. I am surprised that the Supreme Court has ducked making a decision. I would have wanted a decision, even if that decision had been one that I disagreed with. It's always better to have the decision than not. But that, in the end, was what they decided to do.
Yeah, I think everyone in the United States would have liked to have seen the Supreme Court weigh in and give a decision on this. I totally agree with you on that. But it doesn't surprise me that they passed the buck on this one. That they just got, maybe you could say the word scared. I don't know. Maybe they're interpreting the law. Obviously, they know the law better than I do. But they just decided they don't want to touch it. I think that's the bottom line of it. And I've got two other news announcements that I want to make, Alexander. Yes, to people on the live stream, we are on BitChute, we are on Rumble, and we are on Odyssey. You'll find those links down below. So people that are asking, you'll find those links down below to follow us there. Alexander, there's two tweets that I want to read to you, and then you can weigh in on what I said and these two tweets. One comes from Sidney Powell, and I'll read it out to you. It says, Sidney Powell says, "Pay attention. We made emergency filings in Supreme Court tonight for Georgia and Michigan. We'll be filing Arizona, Wisconsin shortly. These cases raise constitutional issues and prove," I can't say the other two words, "and prove that things happened, that bad things happened. Our plaintiffs have standing. We, the people, will not allow bad things to happen during November 3rd. I will try to get around the wording of Sidney Powell's tweet. I'll put a link for Sidney Powell's tweet in the description box down below. And we also have from Giuliani and Jenna Ellis, real quick. I'm reading Citizen Free Press. It says, Giuliani and Jenna Ellis respond to Scotus ruling. Quote, "We're not finished by a long shot." And Rudy Giuliani was on Newsmax. He said, "We're not finished. Believe me." America's Mayor Rudy Giuliani reacted to the Supreme Court throwing out the lawsuit Texas presented. Rudy Giuliani says on Newsmax, "The legal path after the Texas lawsuit rejected by Scotus now is to bring the case in the district court by the president by the electors to bring the same facts, quote, where there would be standing. Rudy Giuliani, after the Supreme Court rejects Texas' bid to overturn election, said, we're not finished. There's nothing that prevents us from filing these cases immediately in the district court. That's a direct quote from Giuliani. And from Jenna Ellis on Newsmax, she said she called the Supreme Court decision deciding on Texas doesn't have standing and, quote, a ridiculous political posture based on some procedural whim. So that is Giuliani and that is Jenna Ellis. Alexander.
Well, first of all, I mean, I agree. I think the Supreme Court should certainly have made a decision here. As I said, even if it had been a decision I disagreed with, it's always better to have a decision because that at least provides clarity, and it would have, if you like, cleared the air one way or the other. The Supreme Court hasn't done that. It's refused to do it. It's hidden behind procedure to avoid doing it. And I think that Giuliani and the others are absolutely within their rights to go on fighting. And I'm fully behind them doing so. I think it's absolutely a proper thing to do. But I have to say that, and there is unfortunately a but, every court, every judge up and down the United States now knows that the Supreme Court doesn't want to look at this case. So that is inevitably going to have an effect, a chilling effect, on any judicial decisions going forward. That doesn't mean, as I said, that this battle is ended. I'm talking about the broader political struggle, which is always an ongoing thing in the United States. Again, I'm choosing my words very, very carefully. But I think we have to be realistic and say that the court challenges are now, I think, we're now approaching the end point with those. That doesn't mean, as I said, that the political struggle doesn't go on. On the contrary, I think it shows the importance of that political struggle, because clearly without it, nothing else is possible. There is not going to be, the Supreme Court riding to the rescue like the 7th Cavalry does in some old American films. That clearly isn't going to happen. It is the people themselves who will have to work together to organize successfully to get the president they want in a future election and to move forward defending the republic, which is the United States. And I think that is the challenge now, and that is the focus now. And one should accept, sometimes one can't win every battle, but there is no reason to feel deflated, no reason to feel disappointed. On the contrary, one should be stimulated by the challenge. I have seen politics so long in my life. I've seen them in so many places, and I can say with confidence that is what happens. You accept a setback, you reorganize, you go back on the attack, and before very long, you find that you win.
Okay, well, let's take a step back then. There were three strategy paths that the Trump legal team had, and I'll try to sum it up. The one path was trying to work the legislatures, mostly the state, and maybe working your way up to the House, and maybe a long shot there would have been something along the line of the House voting in on the elections, as we know, and each state gets one vote, and that would have been towards Trump's favor. But of course, they were working the state legislators. We saw the hearings and the witness testimony, and maybe the hope there was to get the legislatures to maybe think about sending their own electors, certain things like that. But one strategy was working the state legislators, and so they did that. Another strategy was the one that we've just seen play out and most likely come to an end, and that has been the constitutional legal strategy. In other words, looking at Pennsylvania, the Texas lawsuit, looking at all these things, looking at how all of this has has circumvented the U.S. Constitution and trying to get it to the Supreme Court and getting a Supreme Court ruling on this. And that one looked the most promising. Even Jonathan Turley or Dershowitz or many legal scholars said this one has merit, and this one should at least be heard by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And this has standing, and it seems like a very plausible route for the Trump legal team to take. And now it looks like we're coming to some outcome there. Like I said, they're retooling it, but let's say we have an outcome there as well. You have the third option. And once again, we're going to be very, very careful with our words, everybody. The third option, I'll just sum it up as an executive option. And many people talk about it, and they talk about it in the comment sections, and there's been articles written. Not many videos will talk about it because those videos get taken down right away. But let's just say that it deals with Trump crossing that Rubicon.
Yes.
And putting forth some executive orders or some acts, activating some acts, which would essentially prevent the transition.
Yes.
Say the January 20 transition. And many people define that as Trump crossing that Rubicon. And many people have said we're about to see, and it's interesting, they get dramatic about it. And it is a very dramatic and interesting thing to consider. We are going to see now if Trump is going to be that historic figure, and if he really does cross that Rubicon and drain the swamp with all the implications that go with it. And there's a lot of implications that go with it. I mean, there's a lot.
Yes.
A lot. Or if he is going to take the civic approach, say, I'm not saying he concedes. He doesn't concede, but he just takes the civic approach. And he says, okay, we'll live to fight another day. Let's say it like that. Yes. So what do you think of that? I mean, I think I've summed up the three strategy paths that they took. And I think we are now looking at perhaps the most interesting, the most dangerous, the most unlikely, the most risky, the most historic. Is it going to happen? I mean, I personally doubt it, but I don't know. But let's discuss it. Let's discuss it real quick.
Yeah, very briefly. I mean, realistically, I don't think it's going to happen. And the reason I don't think it's going to happen is, first of all, Donald Trump has never shown any inclination to do things like that. But beyond that, I think that by now, he is a very experienced political figure. And I think he realizes that if he tried to do anything like that, he would have the entire bureaucracy arrayed against him. And I think that he would find himself very, very quickly isolated, and isolated in Congress too. I don't think this would work. I mean, I generally don't think this would work. I think he knows it. I don't think he will do it. I think his strategy, on the contrary, and I think he's signaled it, is very, very clearly now, is that he will, if he has to vacate the White House because his other routes, the ones that you identified, have failed, it is that he will prepare for a run in 2024. And I think most likely he will announce that either on the day of the inauguration or soon after. That, I think, is what his underlying strategy is. I think he also understands that he has to build up a movement. I mean, he's 9/10 of the way there already. And I think he's also got to establish his own information space. And I think he understands that too. But I think that this radical step that you're discussing, I don't think it's his agenda at all. And I don't think it's what he's going to do. I mean, I could be wrong. I'll be obviously extremely fascinated to see how it works out if he does it. But I think also, bear in mind that if he starts taking those kind of steps and they fail, as I expect they would do, then there might be consequences for him personally if he does it. And I'm not sure that I would ever want to encourage someone, quite apart from all the other concerns, I would ever want to encourage someone to act in that way if they put themselves personally at risk. And, I'm thinking of legal actions and all sorts of claims against him. And we already know that there are many people in the Democratic Party who would be entirely delighted if they could find something that they could use to bring proceedings in future against Donald Trump. So I think we should bear that in mind too.
Okay, so you think that it's going to he's going to opt for a civic option?
I think so, and I have to say, I think that is both probably I'm sure it is the correct option, and I think it's a powerful one. I think it is one which has tremendous prospects of success. I mean, bear in mind, Donald Trump won more votes than any other candidate in US history, apart from Joe Biden. I again picking my words carefully there, but he won 75. I think it's 75 million votes or close to that. He's got an enormous amount of support behind him. He won more votes than any incumbent president in US history. He's got a lot of sympathy up and down the country, and people also remember, of course, the way in which there was this relentless campaign waged against him throughout his presidency, as has been admitted even by some of his critics. He has an actually a very impressive record of achievement as president. It seems to me that he's in a very strong position to do what Andrew Jackson and Grover Cleveland did, which is say, my agenda is unfinished, and I think I should be allowed to see it through. And that makes me a strong candidate for 2024. And recent events, the events over my term as president, demonstrate that I have a huge amount to do. And the challenge will be to sort out the many problems in the political system of the United States. I should say again very quickly that I have to choose my words very carefully. I think everybody who's listening to this program understands why.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm looking at the live stream. A lot of people are upset.
Yes.
A lot of people are upset.
Yes.
And they're upset hearing this. But I mean,
yes.
Look, there's still time.
Yes.
And we still don't know, we're not Trump, and we don't know what's going through his mind, and we don't know how he's game planned this out.
No.
I would imagine that he understood that there was a good chance that the Supreme Court would not hear this case. So
absolutely,
if you're Trump and you're saying to yourself, okay, I know that the Supreme Court will most likely not hear this case, and then you're listening to Rudy Giuliani, you have to imagine that he does still have a few tricks up his sleeve. The question is, what could those be outside of what we said, crossing that Rubicon? I mean, that's where I'm trying to figure out if there is a next move on the chessboard.
Well, there clearly are. I mean, there are still legal things to work through. Of that, there is no question. There's a very strong case that's come out of Georgia also. I mean, and even people like Andrew McCarthy have accepted that is a potentially strong case. I have to say, and I come back to this, with this decision of the Supreme Court, which is, this is why I find this a very bad decision, because if the Supreme Court had come out and said strongly, we don't agree with this Texas lawsuit, and given reasons why, well, we would have known we would know that the Supreme Court is prepared to look at these challenges and make decisions. Now, courts up and down the United States are going to say, well, the Supreme Court is not going to make a decision. If it's the Supreme Court is scared to make decisions, then we don't have its backing, and we're also going to take the line of least resistance. And that's what judges are like. I have experience of these things, but still, those legal challenges are there. That's undoubtedly true. There is the other thing of trying to mobilize houses of representatives. Can't really see that happening myself, but you can do that too. I have to say, I think crossing the Rubicon, I don't see Trump doing it. I don't think it's his plan. You're quite right. I'm not inside Trump's mind. We'll see what he does. We will see what he does. But, I understand people are upset. I understand they're unhappy. I would remind them of what I always used to hear Americans say: don't get mad, get even. That's the American way. It's always seemed to me, and there are plenty of ways to do it.
Okay, let's do some super chats real quick before I lose those super chats. From Flying Boar, AG Barr betrays Trump.
Oh, yes. I mean, we've just done a whole live on this. To come back to what we said yesterday in our live stream yesterday, he appointed Durham special counsel and concealed it from the president. And there was a whole investigation of Hunter Biden. And he concealed that not just from the president himself, it seems, but from the entire nation. And allowed, therefore, allegations of Russian disinformation about the Hunter Biden, the Hunter Biden claims, to spread and to circulate and to be given credence by Joe Biden himself. That seems to me an extraordinary thing to do. And again, and I'm picking my words very carefully, clearly he was not keen on undertaking wider investigations of the sort that might have been useful in these lawsuits. So yes, I think Donald Trump personally must feel very betrayed. We will see whether or not he sticks with Barr in the weeks ahead.
Yeah. All right. From Dan Noyes, the net result of illegal voting is a reduction of the legitimate votes to 3/5 of a vote. Same as antebellum South. The answer is the EO of September 2018, the executive order of September 2018.
I think that the right thing to do is to look at ways of, as I said, organizing and bringing legal challenges in time. One of the things that happened was that lots of things were changed and over the course of 2020, and there was no real attempt to push back in terms of legal challenges. In other words, the Republican Party across the nation basically let things go through which they should not have allowed to happen. That doesn't mean it needs to happen again. You can always push back, and I think it can be done. I think EOs at this stage, it's a very risky thing to do at this late stage in the game. And I come back to what I said before. The federal bureaucracy probably wouldn't accept that. Bear in mind what happened with Donald Trump's executive, travel ban executive order back in 2017, just after he became president. They found a federal judge, I think it was in Seattle, and he stopped it right across the United States. If they could do that with a travel ban executive order, which was undoubtedly legal and legitimate, and which the Supreme Court eventually upheld, they can do that with any other EO. And there wouldn't be the time to go to the Supreme Court on this one. And well, we've seen what the Supreme Court's attitude to these cases is anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, they did not.
And Gorsuch. They weren't
Gorsuch.
Yeah, they weren't there.
Yeah.
They weren't there.
And they weren't there.
And I have to say this. I mean, we're talking about betrayal. Betrayal is a strong word, but I am very disappointed in these judges. Very disappointed. I think at the very least, they should have heard this case, hiding behind procedure. And by the way, I don't agree with the reasons at all. As I said, it seems to me that they're ignoring what the Supreme Court was originally set up for, which is to hear arguments between states. It's the point that Alito and Clarence Thomas have made. So I think that the Supreme Court should definitely have heard this case, and then we would have had a decision. And as I said, it would have cleared the air. even if it had been a decision I completely disagreed with. But at least it would have provided genuine finality to this issue, at least the legal aspects of this issue. But they weren't prepared to do that. It's weak, it's disappointing, it's wrong. And I have to say that in terms of these three justices, Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, and Kavanaugh, I think that Donald Trump would feel very, would be entirely justified in feeling extremely let down by them. He fought for them. He fought very hard for Kavanaugh, especially, and we all remember that awful business. He also had to fight very hard for Amy Coney Barrett. Well, he had to fight for all three of them, but there was a lot of criticism of the appointment of Amy Coney Barrett. I think that at the very least, they could have agreed to hear a case like this, which, as I said, falls, it seems to me, entirely within their inherent jurisdiction. In other words, the reasons that the Supreme Court was set up to do. It's, by the way, I will say something, as somebody who has experience of courts, ask any legal practitioner what the worst sort of judge is. It's a judge who cannot make up his mind and avoids making decisions. That is a disaster. And I'm disappointed to see the Supreme Court do just that in this case. If they decided against the position that I wanted them to take, well, I would have had far more respect for them and far more understanding for that. And I'd been able to go through the decision, see the reasons they gave, decide why they made it, agree with them, disagree with them, discuss it, all of that. But avoiding making any decision at all, that, it seems to me, is a betrayal, perhaps not so much of Donald Trump, but of the entire justification for the Supreme Court itself.
Remember that while Trump did appoint those justices, the hand of McConnell was involved throughout the entire process. If not, there were more his appointees than Trump's, I would say. I mean, McConnell had tremendous sway over who Trump was going to put in there for the Supreme Court: Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. And once again, I'll always go to my default position, in my opinion, which is much of this ship was steered into this position by the Republican elitists. The Democrats, we know the Democrats. We know what they were up to. We know what they were going to do. We did tons of videos on the Red Mirage. God, the whole world knew what they were up to. Literally, the whole world knew what they were up to. But the Republican leadership, especially in the Senate, and I'll preface that in the Senate, because in the House, it seems that Trump has a lot more support amongst the Republicans in the House. But in the Senate, they let this thing go. They let it purposefully go. And the Supreme Court, I think, is no exception. I'm not saying that ACB or Kavanaugh or Gorsuch are bad or good, but while they are Trump's picks while he was president, McConnell's hand was definitely involved in that process.
I agree. I completely agree. I mean, they're clearly establishment Republicans in the same way that William Barr is. And their if you like, political agenda, independent from their role as justices, is to advance the interests of the Republican Party, or at least the establishment wing of the Republican Party. And it's not really about Donald Trump at all. And the establishment Republican Party, the Mitch McConnells, the Paul Ryans, those sort of people, they didn't particularly like Trump. They were happy to use him as they used him to, increase their position in the House of Representatives and to increase their position across the country in the gubernatorial elections and in the local state elections. But frankly, he's now served their purpose as far as they are concerned, and they're looking forward. And I have to say, that's what we must also do. I mean, but from a different position, if you like.
Okay, let's go to some more super chats here from Dan Noyes. Yesterday's decision will be viewed as the Dred Scott decision of the 21st century. The Supreme Court has zero balls, and results will be dramatic.
Well, can I just say something?
Results will be dramatic. I agree with that.
I was going to say I've actually seen other people say that too. I mean, I obviously don't want the eventual outcome that happened after Dred Scott, but people have been making that parallel, and I do think this was, frankly, the worst possible decision. Much better for the Supreme Court to hear this case, make a decision I don't agree with. As I said, that's their right. They're the Supreme Court. Give reasons why they made that decision, and then we can move forward. They didn't even do that. They ducked making a decision, and it's the worst of all worlds.
Yeah, I agree with that. They ducked it, and it is the worst of. It was the worst decision they could have made.
It was the worst decision they could have made. I have to say, I'm surprised they took it. I really am. I thought that they would understand that their role as the Supreme Court pointed clearly to them hearing the case and making a decision one way or the other. But
and they used a procedural excuse to get out of it. That's the worst part.
Absolutely. I mean,
even if it's true, they use that excuse. They use that procedural card. They played it, and that's no respect. No respect.
No. I absolutely right. I mean, I can always respect someone I disagree with. That's democracy. That's law. That's all those things. I find it impossible to respect someone who, on an issue like this, won't state what their view is, even though it is their job to give a view.
All right. From Dan Noyes, if we do not act now, there will be no legitimate elections in the future. Welcome to Jamaica. Have a nice day. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the right fear to have is, and I think about what you're saying that, everyone should look ahead. But, the swamp is going to close ranks. The DC blob is not going to let this happen again. They are not going to let this happen again. They're going to make sure that another, even if it isn't Trump, another populist type of leader, whether from the right or the left, a populist, America first type of leader, will never have another chance to ever get even within 100 meters of the White House. They're going to make sure of that. And they're just going to completely close ranks, whether it's on a legislative level or an election level, a media level. They're not going to let any of this happen ever again. And the Democrats and the Republicans are going to be united on this. They're going to all sit down together. McConnell is going to sit at the same table with Pelosi. And they're just going to say, you know what? How did this happen with Trump in 2016? They're going to say, blah, blah, this and that. They're going to say, okay, we need to do X, Y, and Z to make sure this never, ever happens again.
I entirely understand that, and that's an entirely legitimate fear. And I think that is entirely right. They will close ranks. They will do everything they possibly can to prevent a repetition of 2016. And we saw after 2016, we saw with Russiagate, we saw with all the things that followed, how far these people are prepared to go. We saw all of that, but consider also the history of the United States. Look at how things that, it seemed as if things were closed down. King George III was doing what he wanted to do. There were all sorts of problems in the mid 19th century, and yet change happened. I'm afraid it is going to be that kind of epochal battle going forward. But that, it seems to me, is the challenge that people face now. It's not going to be easy. They're going to, as I said, close ranks in exactly the same way that you said. But in my experience, and the history of the United States and the history of other countries confirms it, you can't control things all the time. And eventually that control will crumble and slip through.
Okay, from Flying Boar, if Trump wants to stick it to Washington, then he should pull out of Syria, pardon Assange and Snowden. He should
I
do
totally agree.
regardless of what-
Completely agree. The only thing I would say is pulling out of Syria. He's tried to do any number of times, and again, we've seen how the bureaucracy they don't just ignore him; they lie to his face about it. That's what Jeffrey, who was the the US government's representative on Syria, he actually bragged about it, that they gave him assurances that the numbers of troops had been reduced to 200 in Syria, where in fact they were probably 5 times more. I mean, we've seen how difficult it is for Donald Trump to pull the levers when he's in the White House without him actually having more control of the federal bureaucracy than he did. But the other two things, pardoning Snowden, pardoning Assange, he both can do and should do. He should do them because firstly, they are the right things. They're the right things to do. And secondly, he should do them because that will really set the dividing lines. That will really shock and anger the swamp in ways that nothing else he can do at the moment will anger them. And at the same time, I think it will energize huge numbers of people across the country.
Yeah, I want him to do that, but I also think that Assange, I just don't think he's going to do it in Syria.
No.
He's tried and tried, but if there's one thing, once again, that Democrats and Republicans are united on, it is the war machine, and they're going to prevent any type of troop pullout from anywhere. I mean, he's tried for 4 years to get troops out of there.
Absolutely, and we've just had a national appropriations, a defense bill passed, which is going to go to him for signature, which is supposed to be veto-proof because there's huge majorities, which basically make it all but impossible for a president to withdraw troops from Afghanistan, I believe, without congressional approval. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. By the way, I think that, to me, looks all but unconstitutional, because I would have thought, I'm not talking now, I mean, I'm not experienced in US constitutional law, but how can the Congress, as the legislative branch, decide how the commander-in-chief, who is the president of the United States, deploys US forces? I mean, that seems to be incredibly a bizarre decision. But what it shows again is the extent to which these people are prepared to go to prevent any action being taken to carry out troop withdrawals from everywhere, even though it's quite clear to me now that that is what the people of the United States, most of them, want.
From Dan Noyes, lack of standing is the oldest CIA trick in the book.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I don't know about the CIA, but I mean, in terms of courts, it's always, it's the last refuge of a desperate judge. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it really is. It's you're running away. You're running away from a case, so you turn around and say, well, the plaintiff has no standing, and in administrative law, it really is desperate, and it isn't just desperate. In this particular case, it's frankly far worse than that. Again, I've got to be careful what words I use. I could use much stronger ones, but I mean, I really feel really troubled by this, given, as I said, that this is precisely the sort of case, reading the Constitution, and the Supreme Court was originally set up to decide. Chief Justice Marshall and the other great Chief Justices who led the Supreme Court through most of its history and built it up. They must be spinning in their graves over this one.
All right, Anatoly, super chat. Won't the swamp go after Trump if he goes for the 2024 option? Persecution, prison sort of thing. Can't imagine they'll let him off the hook. I completely agree with that. I had a different position about this earlier, that they don't have anything on him. And I know they don't have anything on him because he is the most investigated president, maybe the most investigated person in history, and they have nothing on him. But it's not, after seeing everything that we've seen over the past year and everything we've seen over the past 2 months, they're going to stop at nothing to make an example of him. And once again, I'll go back to the message that they're going to want to send, which is they're going to close ranks. They're going to make sure another populist leader, another American first leader never has a chance to become president. And I think they're going to try to make an example of Trump and his family and his inner circle. And they're going to say, if you even dare, anyone in the United States ever gets any smart ideas to run for office while being an outsider, this is what's going to happen to you.
Yes, I mean this is what's called lawfare, and incredibly enough, there's even a blog, very very clever, very dangerous blog in my opinion, that actually calls itself lawfare, which has been targeted at Trump and the Trump administration, and has come up with many of the, I think, frankly, dangerous legal arguments that we've been seeing right the way through the entire period of the Trump presidency. They were central, for example, to the impeachment case. But anyway, lawfare can only take you so far. Yes, they can try all of these things against Donald Trump. I think the danger they risk if they do that is that it could very, very easily backfire against them, not just in a legal sense, which it probably would do, even in a very disrupted legal system such as we clearly have in the United States, but in a political sense also. I mean, any political system, if it doesn't have a critical mass of support, again, I have to choose my words very, very carefully, begins to become attenuated and unstable. If lawfare is used to prevent someone of the stature of Donald Trump, standing in an election, then I think that you risk triggering an even bigger crisis than the one you have already.
All right. From President-elect Svatanik, $5 super chat. Thank you very much. From Flying Board, Trump should go full Erdogan and lock these corrupt politicians and judges.
Unfortunately, he had 4 years in which to do it. And he was obstructed at every turn. I mean, he came in as president saying that he would drain the swamp. I don't think he realized how powerful and big and strong the swamp is and how entrenched it is. What he did manage to do is he enraged them, and by enraging them, he exposed them. People can now see the sort of things they can do. They can see, for example, that he can conduct a 4-year investigation alleging Russian collusion, which of course was complete nonsense. And now everybody can see that it was, and can also see that that whole investigation was conducted in bad faith. Of course, the swamp did much more than just that. But again, I have to be very careful what I'm going to say.
From Anatoly, Republicans use Trump like the Democrats used Bernie. Guess they have a lot of things in common now. Maybe they'll become good friends soon. Yes,
with the fundamental difference that Donald Trump is not Bernie. Bernie was colluded in his own abuse. I mean, really, to a shocking degree. I mean, I should say I've lost any respect for Bernie that I might once have had. I mean, his behavior over the last, 4 years has been beyond pathetic. And again, I could use much stronger word than that. Whereas Donald Trump has fought and is still fighting. I mean, we mustn't think that he is not fighting. And we mustn't think that he's not fighting if he doesn't do some of the things that some people are suggesting. You have to fight. You have to sometimes pick your fights carefully in order to win them. And I think Donald Trump, who strikes me as one of the most American presidents that I've ever seen. I mean, he is a very American sort of guy, which is, I think, one of the reasons, by the way, why so many Americans relate to him so strongly. I think he instinctively understands this, and he's a fighter.
Yeah, let me just get some idiots here. Out of here. All right. We have some tools and some trolls in the chat. From Raul Pinto, are we starting to see the end of democracy in the US?
I think well, anybody looking at the events of the last 4 years, or indeed 5 years, I mean, going all the way back to, the origins of Russiagate and beyond, needs to understand, and this is absolutely essential, is that democracy in the United States is frankly, a very dangerous state. It is at real risk of slipping away. And, I say that. People like Matt Taibbi and Glenn Greenwald on the left, they're saying it too. They can perceive it. And that's the battle. That's what people need to fight for now.
Yeah. From Flying Board, no Congress member voted to go to Syria, and the Syrian government didn't invite the U.S., so Trump should be able to pull out.
Yes. Well, of course he should. I mean, we come back to the underlying problem. The president is the president of the United States. He is the chief executive, in charge of the executive. He is the commander in chief. Donald Trump has sought to use these awesome powers that the American people and the Constitution have given him. He sought to use them over 4 years. And the bureaucracy, which is very close to usurping power in the United States, in alliance with various agencies and entities outside the bureaucracy, has thwarted him at every turn. Going back to what the previous questioner viewer said, yes, we are in a very democracy in America is in a very bad place. It's retrievable. It can be fought for. Democracy is always a struggle.
Yeah, well, they're going after the First Amendment, and I think their plan is to get rid of the First Amendment. Once you do that, then you go after the Second Amendment, and then the democratic structure, the whole thing, and you knock the whole thing down.
There is a very disturbing tweet which was discussed by Matt Taibbi by someone who said, that it's time to, we've been looking at disinformation from abroad. Now we must look at fake news and disinformation from at home. In other words, we must start basically doing away with First Amendment rights. Incredibly disturbing. But, we need to understand. I mean, I think people do now understand. Enough people now do understand that there are lots of people like that with these dangerous, un-American views circulating in America.
Guys, I just put the chat a little bit on slow mode because we have over 3,300 people here. And we thought this was just going to be a very calm, quick live.
No, I have to say, I'm going to say straight away, I completely understand why people are angry. We have to be so careful what we say, because we couldn't, if we weren't, well, we might find that we are not able to speak at all.
Well, they just wouldn't let the video go up. It's that simple.
Exactly.
After 100 views, they just take it down. So
exactly.
Anyway, We're just reporting the news. YouTube, we're just reporting the news. From Mark Hewitt, a £5 super chat. Boris is clearly not the best PM for a no-deal Brexit. UK especially, with a Biden-run US, who is, yeah.
Well, we did, but we will see what is going to happen, because of course we're now really at the brink. I was reading parts of the media today. The British media, and it seems that Boris went to speak with Ursula von der Leyen. It didn't achieve anything. There was no breakthrough of any kind. He offered to go to Berlin and Paris to talk to Merkel and Macron directly, and the Germans and the French refused to receive him. And the talk today is that essentially today is the last day of possible negotiations and of any possible deal being agreed. So, we are almost at the point now when a no-deal Brexit is looking like a real possibility. There is always, in these sort of negotiations, the risk, the possibility even, that we could see a massive capitulation at the last moment. But it's looking less likely now. So we may very well be in no real Brexit territory by Monday. We were discussing before we went on this program that Alex and I were likely to do a live stream about that on Monday, and we will see what happens. But what Boris does after, if there is going to be a no-deal Brexit, what he does after, how he deals with that, we will see. He is not a good manager, and it may be that the view will come that he's done what he came in to do and that it's time for someone else. But we will see. We will talk about that all at greater length and in more detail soon.
Okay, from Siddiq, £5 super chat. Thank you very much. From Flying Boar, Russia needs to start arming Syria fast because Biden will war on them.
Russia is arming Syria fast, by the way, and I agree. By the way, there was a very interesting commentary in the Chinese media. I think it was Global Times. It might have been somewhere else, commenting about the appointment of Biden's pick of General Lloyd Austin as the new defense secretary, and it said this is clearly intended to signal that the priority for the Biden administration will be the Middle East. That's the region he knows. That's the region he's familiar with. And he's been brought in basically to reassert US power in the Middle East. The places like Iraq, obviously places like Syria too. There has been some suggestion that whilst he was head of Central Command, he resisted some of the demands to take on the Russians in Syria before. But, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. But that's clearly what the priority is. And I would have thought that the major pressure from the Biden team and from the neocons around him is going to be the Middle East. That has always been their obsession, in my opinion.
Yeah. From Flying Board now, Biden is coming. What will happen to Belarus after Lukashenko?
Well, that is, of course, a huge question, because it seems to me that Lukashenko has basically won this battle. I mean, he's still president. He's all the attempts to organize strikes in Belarus have completely failed. The security forces in Belarus are completely loyal to him, and the protests have very significantly dwindled in size, and they've been now becoming very scattered. It's basically a few thousand people now. So he's seen this off. But what happens after him? We just don't know. Now, there's lots of talk about a new constitution being prepared. The Russians are very, very active now in Belarus. There's been all sorts of very senior Russian officials going there. Maybe we will start to see Belarus being drawn further towards the Russian orbit. But if we've learned anything over the last 20 years, it's that these people, a regime change brigade, once they set their sights on a country, they don't give up. They're completely obsessive about it. So, when Lukashenko goes, it may be that the game will start up at a new level, an even more intense level all over again.
All right, from Flying Boar, will Ukraine ever come back to Russia? The country is going down the drain.
Yes, I've heard the same. I've heard that the situation there is getting significantly worse. And I've also heard, by the way, there was a very interesting report about this, I think in the Financial Times, about how it's depopulating. I mean, even the Financial Times is reporting this, with one suggestion that the true population, the true number of people living in Ukraine now, is down to 35 million, as opposed to 48 million, which is what it was when it gained independence from the USSR. So, it's in a very, very bad mess. I think it's quite possible, even likely, that when this thing eventually plays out, we will see all these former Slav lands starting to reconverge again. I think it's possible, but that may be a historic process rather than a political one.
Not in our lifetime.
Exactly. That's the point I was going to. That's the point I was going to say. I don't think this is likely to happen anytime.
Yeah, Ukraine is a captured country. I mean,
yes, yeah.
Once again, Biden, Obama, they're the ones that pushed the Ukraine color revolution, along with the EU. We're
exactly
let the EU off the hook at all. The EU was very, very much involved in the Ukraine.
Absolutely. I mean, it's
not in our lifetime.
Not in our lifetime. I agree. And the one thing I will say is they captured it, and they ruined it. They destroyed it.
As they did Libya, as they tried to do Syria. They did Syria.
Absolutely.
And it's a shame if they go after Syria again, because it's starting to rebuild a little bit. At least it has tremendous problems, tremendous economic problems. But it would be a shame if they go after Syria again. But they broke. Obama and Biden absolutely, completely demolished Libya and Ukraine. Completely demolished. Not to mention Yemen and God knows where else they put their hands on. They had an absolutely terrible foreign policy.
Absolutely, and they do. I mean, I once said, the Romans made a desert and called it peace. These people, these neocons, they make chaos wherever they go. And they say they're making freedom, but in fact, it's chaos and ruin and disaster wherever they go. No country that's been through a regime change process, a forced regime change process, has come out looking better for it.
Yeah. All right. From Anatoly, what's your opinion on the drone swarm tactic developed by Turkey? Will the Russians be able to hold off this new force? Yeah, that was an article from, I think
Scott Ritter. Absolutely.
Scott Ritter and Black Pigeon Speaks, that channel on BitChute. He has a channel on YouTube, but he promotes his channel on BitChute a lot. He did a fantastic video on that exact article.
I know.
And it makes me think, real quick before you're going to answer this question, it makes me think, Alexander, that much of what Turkey did in the Caucasus, and of course in Syria, but especially in the Caucasus, was test piloting their drone force.
Absolutely. Can I just say, first of all, before I say anything at all, I have to say parenthetically, I am not a military man. I'm not the person who's able to, discuss tactics with great professional knowledge. So I'm not able to discuss it, but it's very interesting articles and very interesting points there. What I will say is this: every weapon system that has been developed in history, at least conventional weapon system, has always in time found its counter. The Turks used drones very effectively in the Caucasus. They also tried to use them in Syria, by the way, earlier this year, and they were much less successful there because they ran up against a much better organized air defense system, which the Russians put in place after the Syrians initially had problems. So that does suggest to me that a well-organized air defense system can cope with these things. I know for a fact, because I've been told by someone who understands these things better than me, that the Russians do already have sophisticated anti-drone weapons. And he told me about a system called the Pantsir, which apparently fires missiles and has automated cannon that can be used against drones. And there's apparently another system called Derivatsiya, which has a very advanced 57mm cannon that can shoot down drones that have been developed for all those sort of things. It seems to me, though, that we have to look at drones, and clearly They are changing warfare, and the nature of warfare is changing, and it's changing all the time. So we will see. I mean, I'm sure that there will be counters found to these things, but then the drones will become more sophisticated to deal with those defenses, and then the defenses will become more advanced to deal with the drones. And then there's also apparently all kinds of uses of jamming weapons as well. I mean, the Russians particularly are very well known to be very skilled at electronic jamming. So it's part of the nature of modern war that, you know, you one side develops a weapon, the other finds the counters, and we will see how it works out. But certainly very interesting articles, and we will see what the counters are and how effective those counters turn out to be.
From C. Mavoso, how can I get the Russian shot? Any idea? I'm not going to say the word, the shot. You have to go to Russia, I think.
I presume so. I mean, I understand it's being, you know, applied in some countries. I believe Hungary is going for it. Brazil is another. Apparently, Saudi Arabia. Apparently, Turkey turned it down.
Yeah. All right. From Deep Mind, is this the end of the Trump 2020 campaign?
No, I mean we've still got you know, a few weeks to go, and you know we will see what happens. But I have to say, in terms of legal challenges, I've explained why. The fact that the Supreme Court, it's not just that the Supreme Court is made a decision I don't agree with. It's the fact that the Supreme Court is refusing to make a decision. That is going to have a chilling effect right across the whole judicial system. You see, if the Supreme Court had made a decision, you could always have gone to other courts and you could have said, well, the Supreme Court said this, but we're arguing that. We're trying to distinguish our decision from what the Supreme Court decided, our claim from what the Supreme Court decided. If the Supreme Court makes no decision at all, then it becomes very difficult to do that. And every judge will say to themselves, well, if the Supreme Court is not prepared to make a decision and won't entertain a suit, then nor should I.
All right, from Flying Boar, Russia should give Syria S-400s because it's not looking good for them. Erdogan will not stop at Syria.
Well, they've provided Syria with very advanced air defense systems already. And of course, there are Russian S-400s in Syria already. So, you know, I think that the Russians will be watching the events in the Middle East very closely, and they will be watching very carefully whatever move you know, Biden and his team make. So I think they will be prepared for this. We'll see what they do.
All right, from Bro Truth, do you think Biden thrust into the Great Reset will spark a civil war and cause a secession of certain states? The November 3rd event was clearly not right. I'll phrase it like that.
Well, can I just say this? I mean, you know, I've lived in a country, Greece, where, you know, I experienced political violence in my childhood. It's absolutely nothing that I ever want to see in any country, certainly not in a country like the United States, which I have great love and admiration for. And it is a terrible thing. But if you want to destabilize your political system, then you behave in the way that the political elite in Washington has been doing over the last 5 years. I mean, we had references to Dred Scott. Again, I hope it doesn't come to that, but I can understand why those parallels are being made now.
Okay, from E. Smith is a new member to the Duran community. Welcome, E. Smith. From Flying Boar, what will happen in the Caucasus in Armenia, Azerbaijan now that Biden is coming?
Well, I'm hearing actually more and more about this, and I gather that the Russians are in fact busy tightening their grip in Azerbaijan and in other places. I don't think either the Russians or the Turks or any of the other major players, the big players, want to see the US there. And I don't think that the Biden people are going to be particularly focused on the Caucasus. I think if they do try and get involved in the Caucasus, I think, oddly enough, it could turn out very badly for them, because it's such a difficult region to work in for an outside power like the US, which doesn't know it very well. So I think their major focus is going to be the US, the Middle East. What I will also say, though, is this. If the Russians don't play this thing well, and we've already said in programs that I think they've lost a lot of goodwill by what they've done, then they could provide an opening to the US going forward. We'd be talking about events in, say, 5 years, perhaps. Not immediately now, but in 5 years' time, it might be a different matter.
Okay, from Edward Turner, if Biden is not in prison in the next 12 months, will he ramp up the Ukraine conflict, taking the heat off himself? China and the rest of taking the heat off of himself, China and the rest of his family, the Russian card will be back on the table.
I'm going to give
Ukraine.
I'm going to give Biden a piece of advice, something I've never done before, and I don't expect ever to do again. In your own interests, with all these investigations going on, stay as far from Ukraine as you can. I think that is absolutely radioactive for you. I'm talking about that for him personally. I think anybody who's followed our earlier programs about Burisma and all that knows exactly what I'm talking about. I think the problems with Ukraine will not come from Biden himself. They will come from various neocons, and I'm afraid from some people in Europe. There's already talk again about, trying to sort of support Zelensky, imposing more sanctions on Russia. There's even talk about, about disconnecting Russia from SWIFT. That hoary old chestnut is coming up again. I still don't think that will happen, by the way. But I mean, obviously the Ukrainian thing isn't played out. But I don't think Biden will go to Ukraine to start problems, and I don't think he should in his own interests. I think the Middle East, Syria, is much more likely to be where the fire comes.
Yeah, it's the low-hanging fruit too, because you could always just do another false flag attack.
Absolutely.
And then you can go to the UN, show some doctor photos, move in the white helmets, and there you go again, and then get the media and everyone outraged, and a large portion of the American population will also be outraged, and Europe will be outraged, and there you go. You're
absolutely.
It's very low-hanging fruit.
Absolutely. I mean, I would add, by the way, that, of course, the other person who will be advising Biden to stay out of Ukraine, at least in that kind of way, is Obama, who always said, and this is, I mean, Obama may be many things, but he's not a fool. He said, that Ukraine is a place where the Russians have escalatory dominance. In other words, they can always outmatch whatever the US does on that territory because it is so close to them. Syria is completely different. It is the US that possesses escalatory dominance there.
Yeah. Okay. From Robert, a lot of people are very angry, cannot accept this. Is leaving the union an option?
Well, I completely understand why people are very angry. I'm not going to advise any state or person to leave the union because, I mean, I'm not an American. And obviously, when that was tried before, it ended in a terrible civil war. But I did see that in response to this Supreme Court decision, the chairman of the GOP in Texas is talking about the law-abiding states forming a, if you like, a partnership within the union. And that is, frankly, a worrying thing. And if you start creating blocks of states within the United States that work together on certain issues, well, it doesn't look so united anymore.
All right. From Utna Sense, 25-hour rent. Thank you very much for that. From Flying Board, China able to become economic powerhouse in 40 years. How come Russia never became one? they got the natural resources more than China?
Well, I mean, that is, first of all, there's a huge history there, which is perhaps
Communism. Let's do communism. That's
yeah,
right.
I mean, yes, there's a huge history there. I mean, so I mean, you know, the other problem, I think, and this is the thing about Russia, is that because it has so many resources, it doesn't have to trade in the way that China does, and China having to trade was an incentive in a way.
Yeah, I think the Russian communist system was very different than the Chinese.
Very
different.
Profoundly so. Profoundly so.
Okay, from Flying Boar, the last one is: what will happen to Ukraine now that Biden is coming to power? How will the how is the Ukraine economy going right now? I think we've answered the first part.
Absolutely.
And the Ukraine economy is...
It's going down. I mean, it's the short answer. It's going down. The more people are leaving. It's in a very, very poor state. And there doesn't seem to be any realistic way to turn that round. And Zelensky, who was elected on, in my opinion, always an impossible program of turning Ukraine round, has found that he's becoming increasingly isolated in Ukraine. He's apparently having problems with Kolomoisky, who was his oligarch patron, who's now mobilizing, putting together a majority in parliament against him. And of course, he does what Ukrainian presidents invariably do, which is that he's taking the line of least resistance by hardening his anti-Russian positions.
All right. Okay. We got it. We got every super chat, I think. We got all the questions. Oh, we said we were going to go online for about 20, 30 minutes. We went for an hour 15. Wow. Okay, thank you, everybody.
So can I just say, a very difficult program for us, because obviously, you know, this isn't the outcome we would have wanted. I've made very clear what I feel about the Supreme Court decision. And just to say again, thank you very much for coming.
We got one more. We got one more. No, it was a good live stream. It was a pleasure speaking with everybody.
Absolutely.
We always have a good time when we get on live and interact with everybody in the community. Yes. We have an update on Nord Stream 2 from Flying Boar. We always need to talk about Nord Stream 2 because it still hasn't finished.
Oh no! But they've restarted work now. Apparently, I mean, I was reading that yesterday, that apparently there's now ships, and they're doing all the work in the German economic zone, you know, under the sea. So all sorts of things are happening. I mean, there's more U.S. sanctions, but it does look now like a certain done thing. What I will say is this. This has been that there's been Russian statement after Russian statement. They've been pouring out of Moscow. The Russians have made it absolutely clear that they're never going to do another Nord Stream again. I mean, they're never going to go through this business with all its dramas and melodramas all over again. So if any future German leader comes along and says, we want to build, you know, more gas pipelines, the Russians this time are going to say an absolute no. And Russian gas pipelines are being built, and they're heading east. They're going to China. So that's what we've achieved.
Thank you very much, JB, for that $4.99 super chat. We will end it there. All right, guys, have a great Saturday. Enjoy the day, everybody, and enjoy the weekend. We will be back on, we'll have some more videos this weekend. We've got one on Soros. Keep an eye out for a really good one on Soros and Hungary and Poland. Yeah. And Soros is going after Hungary and Poland really, really hard. We got one on the Greek economy coming up. We have a really good one on Hunter as well, which is in the works. And we got one on a wrap-up of Eric Swalwell as well.
Indeed.
So we got a good one there. So we have a lot of videos coming out tomorrow and on Monday, and we will do a live stream as well. Monday, most likely, we'll do live in the evening London time. Right? Or do you want to do this time, Alexander? We'll see. We'll do a live stream for Brexit on Monday as well.
Yes.
I don't know. Is this time good for people? Did people like this time that we did this live stream? Let me know.
Yeah,
if you
absolutely. It's a working day, so it may be that for the afternoon in the US, it might be more difficult, and it would also be the afternoon in London. So maybe we'll do it in the evening. We'll see. We'll see.
All right, guys, have a great weekend.
Right.